Hello folks, welcome back. This is Chris in England, and confirmation of another group, another arrival of South African refugees in the United States, having departed on the 27th of August, arrived safely today, the 28th of August in the United States, 28 August 2025. The next group that we're publicly aware of, as I said, there are people arriving at different times. I'm not aware of all the groups, but I am aware of a group that arrived today in the United States. Now this comes on the heels of the Minister of Foreign Relations, Durko, Ronald Lamola, last night holding a press conference in which he called the United States Refugee Resettlement Program a fast-track immigration program for Afrikaners. The program is not for Afrikaners, number one. The program for South African racial minorities suffering from past racial injustice or having legitimate, genuine fear of future persecution. That's who the program is for. That would include whites, Indians, and coloreds, but apparently he just can't seem to wrap himself around that. You don't have to believe me, folks. Just go to the U.S. Embassy, za.usembassy.gov website. The description of the program, the qualifications, the criteria are right there. They've been there since May 12th. Apparently, the government of South Africa refuses to admit the truth, as does the media in South Africa. But that is the bottom line. It is for racial minorities, not whites, not Afrikaners, not farmers, all of whom would qualify because they're racial minorities. So this group has arrived in the United States. I have confirmation of a group relocating in one particular state. I knew this group was coming over and I was waiting to get confirmation. We don't want to endanger their safety, but they've arrived safely in the United States now and dispersing to the locations where they're going to be in temporary settlement for eventual resettlement there in the United States. Congratulations to that group of people. You know, Lamola said that they weren't refugees under the UN definition, but in fact, he is factually incorrect. They are exactly refugees under the UN definition. People facing persecution for their race is the first thing mentioned under the convention for those folks for refugee state. As simple as that. So one needs only look at the United Nations documents to see the facts and not listen to the propaganda coming out of Durko. So he also said that beside this being a fast-track immigration program for Afrikaners, every bit of that statement was factually a lie. Besides that, he also said that the United States taking privileged Afrikaners is essentially Apartheid 2.0. So as if relations between the United States and South Africa aren't frosty enough already, Ronald Lamola once again opens his mouth and sticks his oversized foot in his mouth and calls America an apartheid state. I don't think that's going to go very well in Washington, D.C. It certainly didn't go very well with me. We don't have a system of racial segregation. That was dismantled many decades ago in America. Many decades ago, before I was even born, it was dismantled. In fact, the year that I was born, the civil rights legislation passed that year just before my birth. So I don't want to hear this nonsense from people who actually pass 145 laws to racially discriminate against South African racial minorities. And you're going to tell me America is Apartheid 2.0? No, there's no separate development in America. People can live where they like to live despite the lies and propaganda of leftist media and academics and the fake legacy media in America. People can live where they want. It's a question of resources. I'd love to live about 2 miles from where I do live, in a place where people have $1.5 million homes. But I'm not wealthy enough to afford that. So I live in a middle-class neighborhood where I can afford to live. And my neighbors include Arab Muslims, Asians from South Asia, and a lot of white folks. And that's because that's where those folks chose to buy a home. So this Apartheid 2.0 nonsense from Ronald Lamola is insulting and counterproductive. You know, at a time when South Africa should be seeking to resolve its differences, which the government of South Africa has created with Washington, D.C., they intentionally continue to ramp up the rhetoric and insult the United States. Trump has been very generous so far. There's been no actions taken against South Africa other than suspending aid. But frankly, you know, they kept looking a gift horse in the mouth, and they kept whining and attacking America's foreign policy, our friends, our partners, and allies. And as a consequence, Trump turned off the aid. Look, if you're going to call us names, we're not going to give you money. We're not stupid. It's about time. You know, we gave $8.1 billion to fight HIV over a 22-year period. And what do we get for it? The response from the South African government when the aid was cut off is, well, the U.S. aid doesn't really matter. It's only 17% of the money spent on HIV. Really? In the beginning, it was nearly 100%. Because your government under Talon Bezuidenhout refused to acknowledge HIV. Remember, it was caused by poverty. Poverty causes HIV, and it can be cured by beetroot, according to Dr. Beetroot, Moncho, whatever her name is, the one who died, who destroyed her liver because she was an alcoholic and then got a liver transplant and destroyed that one too. Yeah, her idiocy, trained in the Soviet Union, real doctor that was. And then Talon Becky's small-minded, refused to accept the reality that the HIV virus is what causes AIDS. Anyway, lots of people born with HIV unnecessarily in South Africa because he wouldn't let us use Nevirapine, which we donated for free. Anyway, so to hear the foreign minister of South Africa insult America after we've generously, the taxpayer, given billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars to help South Africa's trade, to stop gender-based violence, to help your education system, to do research universities, basically fund almost all the research universities because it's all stopped now. The whining and crying from Rhodes and UCT and all the universities about, we have no money, give us $2 billion, give us $2 billion. Well, that's because the U.S. has stopped funding your research, and now they need money from elsewhere. And the 17% that we gave, well, after the truth came out that almost all the surveillance and monitoring programs, which are critically essential for maintaining successful HIV reduction programs and treatment programs, almost all the monitoring and surveillance was paid for by the USAID. Now that money's gone. So the lies that the South Africa's government intentionally insulting America, saying our money wasn't important, it was only 17%, yada, yada, yada. You are digging your own graves here. And calling America Apartheid 2.0, wow. I tell you what, I think if people want to take lessons in how to fail at diplomacy, you should watch the actions and listen to the comments emanating from the presidency, from the DIRCO, and from senior members of the ANC in South Africa. And you will learn all the steps that you shouldn't take when it comes to diplomatic affairs with foreign nations. What say you folks? Congratulations to those who have achieved succor and safety with their arrival in the United States. I wish you well. And don't sit on your bum. Get out there and get a job. Start paying taxes. We all do. Cheers.